Because of modern interventions, we're able to keep a fetus for in the first trimester viable, where you had, if you had a thyroid disorder in 1900, you had a miscarriage, 1, 2, or 3 miscarriages. And if you did, with all the trauma of having miscarriages, you miss out basically on having children. And by the way, if you were able to carry the full term, you couldn't. You'd have a premature birth and all the complications of premature birth. And that is what kept the figures very, very low. Modern intervention, by putting a woman on bed rest, monitoring their blood pressure. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that modern medicine can now do to keep a fetus viable. And that is why the incidence has increased and being passed on hereditarily through the mother or father, and into the children, grandchildren, etc.
Have you made it past menopause, or are you going through it now? I'm Dr. Pat McShane, and on the Women's Health Span Voices podcast, I'll guide you through the menopausal transition and beyond, helping you to thrive in this powerful time of your woman. Hello, and welcome to Women's Health Span Voices. I'm Dr. Pat McShane, and I have the honor and privilege today of having Dr. Daryl Turner with us. And he is trained in clinical research. His doctorate is in clinical research, and he is a hormone specialist. And he'll be able to tell us a lot of the various things that he has perfected over his career. And he's still involved in patient consultations. In fact, after our interview today, that's what he's going to be doing. So he has worked a lot in thyroid disease as well as in other hormonal diseases. So very good to have you with us, Dr. Daryl, today. So
thank you very much, Dr. Pat, for just inviting me and for spreading the solutions out there. And there are solutions to your hormonal problems if you look in the right places. And I'm going to give you some of those answers. Thank you.
Before our interview, I was curious about the incidence of thyroid disease in women over age 50. And it's estimated that it affects about 20% of women. So this is a very, very common issue with a lot of people. So, and many women, I'm sure, don't have difficulty finding good care, and they may easily find resolution of their symptoms, but many others may not find that. And one problem is symptom crossover. So often a woman will go to a physician's office with a set of symptoms that could be just her menopausal status. It could be thyroid disease. It could be low-grade chronic illness of some other type. So that is probably a good jumping off point for you to start to tell us the clinical situations that you have found to be the most common, where your expertise or the systems you've developed may come into play.
Dr. Pat, the very first thing that we get a patient to do is to tell us what their symptoms are. Most doctors don't have time to ask the patient to run through a long list of symptoms. Our patients answer a questionnaire, and the symptoms are out of my endocrinologist handbook. And if you score a certain, for instance, if you score 8 or more on the symptom survey, you are by definition subclinical hypothyroid. The incidence of being hypothyroid is actually a lot higher than 20%. We find that of that 20%, 18% have an autoimmune disorder as well. So the treatment protocols are quite different. But some of the symptoms are cold hands and cold feet. As soon as I shake a patient's hands, I know immediately, I suspect if they've got cold hands, cold feet, that they have a thyroid disorder. And of course, I also put my hand on the tip of the nose if it's cold, and then they have a thyroid disorder. The other symptoms are the outer third of the eyebrows are missing. You got a little bit of hair loss up here. You have 2 parallel lines around your neck. Your weight distribution between here and your hips tends to increase every year, because thyroid controls how many calories you burn. And your body is slow and slow. In other words, constipation, the thought process, depression, your thought process slows down. You cannot answer questions as fast. Not only depression, but a lot of other brain complications with having low thyroid function. And it's easy for us to detect. And according to Dr. Broda Barnes in their books and Dr. Terry Hertog, or Hodege, the number one and number two leading experts in the world, they postulated in their books that about 80% of everyone went up from 20% in 1900 to 80% today has a thyroid disorder. Don't forget that thyroid is inherited, so there's nothing you've done wrong. And we have confirmed after we are now approaching patient number 3 million through all of our clinics around the world that focus on thyroid, and we have confirmed that it is about 80% of everyone that assess it have the symptoms, low reflexes, slow resting and low resting metabolic rate. And if they have all those, and then they have a thyroid problem.
What's the hypothesis about why the prevalence is increasing so much of the background number of people with thyroid disorder?
Because of modern interventions, we are able to keep a fetus for in the first trimester viable, where you had if you had a thyroid disorder in 1900, you had a miscarriage, 1, 2, or 3 miscarriages, and if you did, with all the trauma of having miscarriages, you miss out basically on having children. And by the way, if you were able to carry the full term you couldn't, you'd have a premature birth and all the complications of premature birth, and that is what kept the figures very, very low. Modern intervention by putting a woman on bed rest, monitoring their blood pressure. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that modern medicine can now do to keep a fetus viable. And that is why the incidence has increased and being passed on hereditarily through the mother or father, and into the children, grandchildren, etc. Once it's in the family, Dr. Pat, is in the family.
Yes, as a fertility specialist, that was, day one, we would test people's thyroid, and if they were even subclinically low, we would place them on a low dose thyroid hormone replacement regimen. And then as soon as they became pregnant, we would increase it because we know that the requirement for thyroid hormone does rise in pregnancy. So I can hear a lot of what you're saying in the idea that we've been preserving pregnancies that might not have ever come to birth or survived through the birth process by our current practice of medicine. So that's very, very interesting. Yeah. And the risk of other autoimmune diseases seems to be rising as well, probably from other toxins in our environment and so on. So, yeah.
Sure. I can answer that if you want.
Sure. Please.
The incidence of Hashimoto's has remained about 18% through most of the world. But for instance, in India, where I do a lot of work, is 60% of everyone has autoimmune. Autoimmune disease is triggered by low iodine. So you're born with low thyroid function, and combine that with low iodine over a period of time, you don't necessarily have to develop it, but there's a higher probability that you will develop a disease called Hashimoto's. And Hashimoto's, in my clinical trials on 2,200 people over 3 years, I discovered, and that's why I'm on the worldwide lecture circuit for, on how to reverse Hashimoto's disease. Not just cure it. Not just put it into remission, but actually totally reverse it. You don't want to, you want to eliminate Hashimoto's, because being an autoimmune response, it goes to your digestive system, feeds back to your brain, and there's a whole lot of, like, you double your chance of getting Alzheimer's. You get all the Parkinson's, like shaking disorders. It goes on and on and on. So it's best to stop it in its tracks as soon as possible, and we do have a solution for that.
And you mentioned that you have hundreds of clinics around the world that are following the various protocols that we're going to be talking about today. I don't recall the number 600, I think you told me.
About 800 clinics.
800, sorry.
Yes, that
It's
that that have the testing machines and use my medications. Yes,
okay. So tell us a little bit more about the cure for Hashimoto's if you're willing to do so.
sure. I'm happy to do it. As I said, Hashimoto's is nothing that you've done wrong. You just happen to not have enough iodine. A fairly large percentage of Americans don't get enough iodine in their diet. We used to be able to get it out of our food sources, like our fruits and vegetables, but the earth is now depleted from those critical minerals. You can get it out of seafood. Seafood is now the primary source, but as you know, seafood, which I had last night, for instance, has become a bit of a luxury, and we try to eat it as much as we can. Within the mitochondria, the lack of iodine triggers a autoimmune response. It can either do TGAB or TPOAB. TPOB, which is Hashimoto's, is the most common, and you end up with an autoimmune disease. We have a solution which we discovered in my clinical trials, and it takes us an average of 1.5 years to reverse a patient to where they are totally symptomatic free and free of autoimmune.
And the treatment involves various kinds of
Uh,
thyroid supplements, is what I recall from some
yes,
reading I did of your other materials. Yeah.
yes, yeah. When we treat a patient, we treat the core hormones, which is sleep, adrenals, because they have a major interplay on how thyroid functions on a number of different levels. And the way we use the different thyroid medications, switching between natural, bioidentical, and synthetic, we're able to make the immune system operate in a way that we want it to operate, in conjunction with something called LDN and a few other little tricks we have up our sleeve to like high doses of vitamin D to modulate the immune system to perform the way that we want it to perform over a period of time. For instance, my wife had Hashimoto's, and today there's no trace of it whatsoever. And we're approaching patient number 500,000, half a
Wow.
million, that we
Wow.
have now reversed from autoimmune, or from the grip, I should say, the grip of autoimmune.
Yeah. One, just to back up a little bit, the populations of the world that are unlikely to be eating seafood are where the highest prevalence of the Hashimoto's is, as I recall from my endocrinology training a while back. So, where they just
Yeah,
don't have sea in mountainous regions, for example. So, if
yes.
people
And
are
that,
wondering, yep,
and that, Dr. Pat, that is why the the incidence in India is so high, because they're on a
yep.
vegetarian diet. There's nothing wrong with a vegetarian diet if they take an iodine supplement, but without an iodine supplement, they end up autoimmune. It's as simple
Yeah,
as
the salt that I grew up with on the table at home in Chicago was iodine containing as well, and I wonder if people backing off on their salt intake or eating more salt from restaurants and fast food may not be getting the iodine supplied salt that one would get if you buy the blue box with the iodine attached to the salt. So, yeah.
yes, that the iodized salt helps a lot. But as you know, we all use designer salts now, pink salts, and
Yes.
there is no iodine in salt unless it's put in,
Yep.
basically.
Yep. Maybe back up a little bit and tell us if the average person is tested for thyroid disease, what is involved in that, and then that's not picking up that your protocols are more likely to correctly diagnose.
Okay, I love to talk about that. In
Yes.
the 1940s and 1950s, right up until the mid 1970s, actually, the speed of the reflexes were used. as you know, Dr. Pat, we were taught in school that the speed of the reflexes slow up and slow down with thyroid function. And
just for our audience, that might be when somebody tapped on your knee or
yes,
gave a quick little jerk to your ankle to see how your body reacted to that. And
absolutely correct.
yeah, yeah, good. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. And so in the 1940s and 1950s, when I was a young boy, my doctor used to sit me on his table and hit my knee, exactly what you said. He'd
Yeah.
judge the speed of my reflexes. And of course, you're in this field. When a baby was born, they did a heel kick test, not a heel prick, a heel kick test, and judge the speed of the reflexes. Reflexes are very well correlated with thyroid. It's called the Waltman's effect. And that was used up until the mid 1970s when they decided to use blood. Now it's been well proven that bloods are only 18% accurate. According to Sir Dr. Richard Bayliss, head of the Endocrinology Society in England and Europe, he stated a few years ago at the Endocrinology Society that none of the bloods, be it TSH, T3, T4, free T3, or free T4, are valid for determining thyroid function. And he went on to say the only things that are valid are the symptoms and the speed of the reflexes. That's a fairly clear, concise statement by our own endocrinology societies. And so what I did is I simply took the information and I used modern technology to measure the speed of the reflexes and the neurotransmitter speeds, as well as the resting metabolic rate. And what we call a thyroflex machine has now been used approaching 3 million people and around the world. It's a very fast, accurate test and determines the thyroid function within 4 minutes. What blood is good for is autoimmune and reverse T3, RT3, and TPOAB and TPAB, but not for determining thyroid function.
Interesting. So if someone has symptoms that evoke or findings on the physical exam, as you said, the cold hand, the cold nose, the sluggish reflexes, you would recommend that they have this test to determine their thyroid function rather than the blood test that's typically offered in a clinic or a doctor's office. Is that correct?
That is correct. And there's been many papers written on why blood tests are not accurate. But the very latest one is out of Germany by Dr. Rudolf Hauner. And they have just written a very thick textbook proving mathematically, not statistically, that any of the blood tests are not valid. And that's going viral through the major teaching universities throughout the world. And actually mentioned myself in there as well, saying that I do reflex tests. But reflexes are really coming back to the basis of medicine as it was 200 years ago. The reflexes are the best way to determine thyroid function.
My guess is that this is falling by the wayside as we depend more and more on blood testing and also telehealth. I've asked some of the physicians in our core of experts who are doing exclusively telehealth, don't you miss actually being with the patient and seeing what she, how she is essentially. And they tell me that they can find what they need to know from careful questioning, lengthy questionnaire of presumably symptoms and lifestyle behaviors. So just a word of caution that sometimes the physical exam is the trump card in
Absolutely.
the clinical interaction.
I'm an old-fashioned doctor.
Yeah,
So
me too, obviously. Yeah.
I'd like to see the patient. Yeah.
Yes. In the face-to-face. Yeah.
Face
After
to face.
that, after the first time, for you, I presume you test the response of reflexes to the dosing of the thyroid hormone that's being used to determine whether you're in the proper range or not. Is that correct?
That's correct. The ThyroFlex is 98.5% accurate. Not only can it identify whether you're hyper or hypo, and within our questionnaires, reverse T3, TPOAB, TGAB, but also we're able to titrate you to exact dosage. I was able to take the guessing game out of how much shall I put the patient on, which we all used to have to guess at.
Yes.
And now with this machine, it's very accurate. You start them on one point, you retest in 30 days. The average patient is on the correct dose after 90 days. And it makes the symptoms disappear every single time. And the quality of their life totally turns around. They have a big smile on their face.
Thyroid is so pervasive. I mean, I don't know what percentage of the cells in our bodies, cell types respond to thyroid, but I bet it's a very large number. It's critical to cellular functioning for so many different organs. So
That's correct.
maybe switch gears and talk about high thyroid, thyrotoxicosis, Graves' disease, and so on. We've been talking mostly about low thyroid.
Graves is a lot. Graves is a lot lower percentage of
Yes.
about 1%. We estimate of everyone who has autoimmune, and Graves you can pick it up in the bulging. The eyes it has a technical name, but it has a bulge in the eyes. So as soon as I see a patient's eyes bulging, I know that they possibly have autoimmune Graves. Graves is TGAB, but you got to be very careful because some patients are called hashimotoxicosis. In other words, they're both Graves and Hashimoto's. So you can't use the Graves protocol by calming the thyroid down and treating it. You can't use the Hashimoto's protocol because they could have a tachycardia event. Rapid heartbeats or skipping of the heartbeat. And so, number one, the blood test determines whether you have Graves or not. Straight Graves, out of all the patients, out of the millions of patients, we haven't had to do one partial ablation on one single patient, which is quite amazing, unless there's thyroid cancer. And but we're not talking about that with Graves. And it's really, once we calm the thyroid down and keep it under control for the rest of the patient's life. The hashimotoxicosis is when you have both Graves and Hashimoto's, and we have developed the DNA test because we know that it's rooted within your DNA, and within the DNA, and we do a DNA test. We find the root cause of where the problem is. And so we do a DNA test. We get down to the root of who the person is, and we identify within the DNA, and we do a DNA RNA intervention.
Okay. Any other disease states that we should be covering here today?
Reverse T3.
Go for it.
So, as I said, when we balance the thyroid, we have to balance the sleep, the adrenals, and of course, the reverse T3 is a function of adrenal exhaustion. So when the thyroid is not acting properly, we know that it's possibly a reverse T3 problem, especially if the TSH is suppressed. If it's below, say, 0.5, then we suspect reverse T3. We run a reverse T3 protocol or blood test. We have special protocol to fix the reverse T3. It's fairly simple for us, but we're usually out of it in 30 days. But it not only involves medicine, Dr. Pat, it involves the way we modulate the brain with music. It involves another set of hormones that we use in another medication we manufacture called bioadrene for the adrenals, as well as the patient modifying some of their impacts on the way stress is affecting them. So it's a combination of approaches. But most patients, we have pulled out a reverse T3 within 30 days.
Good, good. We haven't talked about lifestyle here. Almost every podcast that I do, there's a lifestyle component. And I'm
Absolutely.
wondering if there is one in the thyroid space as well. And you've said several times it's nothing that you did. It's your genetics or it's your iodine or something of that nature. But are there things that lifestyle does impact on the thyroid?
We don't say anything if you're just straight hypo or hyperthyroid, but we do say a lot if you're reverse T3, Hashimoto's, Graves, or Hashimotoxicosis. The very first thing that we do is we put you onto a paleo diet. Number one. Number two, you must exercise a minimum of 20 minutes a day. And that is the minimum that you should do is brisk walking, if not more.
Which, of course, we're all supposed to be doing for any number of other reasons. So,
yes.
but fine, yes.
Yes. So that's that. And then, of course, with adrenals and sleep, we ask the patients to listen to a binomial style of music where we alter the brain waves between beta and alpha into theta, and so that is some of the tools that we use outside of plain medicines in certain situations. As you know, a lot of our menopausal women or perimenopausal have sleep issues. We have amazing things to work with sleep, but our medications can only do half of what has to be done. The other half has to be done by the patient taking affirmative action. For instance, sleep. You've got to sleep in a cold room. You can't be warm. You got to have a hot shower. You got to have the room blacked out. You can't watch TV for at least 1.5 hours before you go to bed. You can read in bed. You've got to make sure that you have a hot shower, a hot bath before bed. There's a whole lot of things that we tell our patients to do besides giving them natural bioidentical hormones to help them to sleep. The primary hormones we use are GABA, valerian, passion flower, 5-HTP, and melatonin. And the big one, of course, to relax, a thing called Trimag that relaxes the brain and the muscles. But that will only do half the job, Dr. Pat. The other half has to be done by the positive action of the patient. Like, for instance, as simple as eating smaller meals earlier. Don't go to bed with a full stomach. So they're all part of our treatment protocols for sleep. And sleep is a major, major problem, not only with our menopausal and perimenopausal woman, but I'm finding even a lot of young children now are having problems with getting 8 hours and 10 minutes of sleep a night.
Yeah, social media, telephones. Yeah,
it's out.
Yep, yep, yep. Anything else that you think our menopausal audience should know about thyroid disease or anything else for that matter?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. I deal with the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. We actually make the natural bioidentical testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, oxytocin, etc. And the thyroid controls your estrogen and your progesterone. So if your thyroid's out, the estrogen progesterone cannot be in balance. If you're going to balance the estrogen and progesterone, you're going to get the thyroid right first. Sometimes with our young patients, not necessarily, but our young girls going into puberty who want to rule the house because their hormones not right, we simply balance the thyroid. And that actually makes the estrogen and progesterone balance out beautifully. I have a daughter. Well, she's now 45, but I made sure that she did not rule our house. So I made sure her thyroid was balanced and and I didn't have to touch her estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. With our older female patients going into menopause, we make sure that they do a thyroflex test, we balance their thyroid, and then we go on to their estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I prefer either the urine or the saliva to the blood test, but that's up to the practitioner. But I prefer that because I think that it puts my patients at a lot less risk. And then it's fairly straightforward to use the natural bioidentical hormones, which do not have any risk, unlike a synthetic, to get their hormones exactly where it should be. We take them back to the age of a 44-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wonderful.
yeah, and it slows everything down. In fact, we practice the practice. We want you to keep your menstrual cycles as long as possible.
Hmm.
In case you in perimenopause, all the better.
Mm-hmm.
Health, please.
Yep. Yep. Wonderful. Well, this has been a fun episode to talk about things that from a relatively different viewpoint, but that affect so many people. And I encourage our audience to, if they're not happy, if they're not finding good success with the treatment of their illnesses, with their thyroid in particular, or with their symptoms that seem pretty nonspecific and haven't been diagnosed or treated properly, to seek out a different approach, perhaps. So thank you so much for this great information and for your expertise.
Thank you very much for allowing me on your show. May I tell your patients how to get in contact with us?
Absolutely. Please do.
www.nitechmedical.com. That's nitechmedical.com.
If you're on the YouTube or the Dr. Talks videos, I think that information will be in the show notes. But if you're listening on Spotify or any iHeart,
Yes.
now you have the link. So thank you so much. Take care now.
Dr. Pat, I enjoyed talking to you, and you did ask the right questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
If this episode spoke to you, please share it with a friend ready to take charge of her health. And please leave a review. It helps more people to find us.